I used to think the military would finally make my parents proud. It didn't. Not even close. Growing up, it didn't matter what I did. I could have won a Nobel Peace Prize, and my mom would have still said, "Well, your sister argued a case in mock trial when she was 13. My sister, Lauren, was the golden child. Straight A's, debate team captain, Ivy League scholarship, and eventually a high-powered attorney at some firm in downtown Chicago, with a name so long it sounds made up. Me? I joined the Navy, not because I flunked out of life, or whatever they like to think. I just wanted something different, something mine. I enlisted after failing the LSAT once. That was enough for Lauren to brand me as not law school material, and for my parents to stop making eye contact when people asked what I was up to. Lauren? She crushed the LSAT, graduated from Michigan Law, and somehow never let me forget it. We hadn't really spoken in almost 2 years when the invite came for our 10-year high school reunion. I didn't plan on going. The idea of standing in a hotel ballroom while Lauren told our old classmates how she once saved a multinational corporation from a hostile takeover made me nauseous. I could already picture her fake laugh and the way she'd say, "My little sister's doing military stuff somewhere," like I was off pet-sitting submarines. Still, I kept the invite on my fridge for reasons I couldn't explain. Maybe part of me wanted to see if she'd changed. Spoiler, she hadn't. A week before the reunion, I applied for a VA-backed home loan. Nothing big, just a modest house near the base in Norfolk. I had good credit, stable income, zero debt, so I was confused when I got denied. At first, I assumed it was a system error. Then I saw the reason. High-risk applicant due to outstanding personal loan balance. What loan? I stared at the screen for 10 straight minutes. I hadn't taken out any loans outside of my military housing benefit, and certainly not one for $42,000. So I called the credit union. The lady on the line was polite until she asked if I was calling to dispute a loan from 2020, opened in Chicago. That's when my stomach dropped. I haven't lived in Chicago since 2015. She told me the account had been active for nearly 3 years. Payments had been late, deferred, caught up, missed again. My name was on every single line. "Did you authorize this loan?" she asked. I said no. She sighed, like she'd heard this 100 times, and started listing the next steps. File a dispute, send ID, request a fraud investigation. The whole thing sounded exhausting and terrifying. I hung up and sat on the edge of my bed in full uniform, feeling like the dumbest person on earth. Not because of the loan, because I immediately knew who did it. Lauren. I wasn't 100% sure yet, but let's be real. There are only a handful of people who would have had my social security number, access to old addresses, and enough arrogance to pull this off, thinking they'd never get caught. The timing made sense, too. In 2020, Lauren had been caught up in some client cash flow crisis that made local headlines for about 2 seconds. She brushed it off at the time as nothing serious. But 42 grand? That kind of debt doesn't come from Amazon shopping sprees. I started digging. I pulled my credit reports from all 3 bureaus. Same account showed up each time, same balance, same lender, same origination date. I checked the IP address used to open the online application. It was masked, but I knew a few things about digital forensics, thank you, naval intelligence training, and within an hour, I traced the sign-up location to a law firm server in Chicago. Guess where Lauren works? Now, I'm not saying she did it right away, but I wasn't going to ignore how all signs pointed to her. And not just circumstantial signs. Everything about this loan had her fingerprints figuratively, and maybe literally. Before I could even process what was happening, I found myself back in military mode, organizing, documenting, compiling. I started printing statements, making notes, pulling archived emails where Lauren had casually mentioned helping with some financial stuff on my behalf years ago. Funny how I'd brushed it off then. And just as I was halfway through assembling a timeline of events, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a mass email to our high school class. Subject line, exciting reunion update. I clicked it. Apparently, our keynote speaker was going to be none other than Lauren Whitaker, Esquire. Of course. The theme was resilience and success. I actually laughed out loud. It was too perfect. The same person who used my identity, dragged my credit through the mud, and smiled through it all, was about to stand in front of a hotel ballroom, full of people, and talk about integrity. You really can't make this stuff up. And that's when something in me flipped. I wasn't just mad anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was done. If she wanted a stage, I'd give her one. But I'd be the one holding the mic. Quick note, if you've ever dealt with family drama that made you want to scream into a pillow, drop a comment. And if you're into revenge stories that stay legal and lethal, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. By the way, the moment I realized just how far Lauren went, that came next. When I asked her directly, and she didn't even try to deny it, I stared at the screen for way too long before deciding to call her. Not text, not email. I wanted to hear her voice when I asked. Lauren answered on the second ring like she always did, perfectly timed, professional tone. "Aaron, wow, I was just thinking about you," she said, as if we'd just had brunch last week. "No, you weren't," I said flatly. "Quick question. Did you take out a $42,000 loan in my name back in 2020? Silence. Not a pause, not a breath. Silence. It was the kind of silence that made your brain short-circuit, because now you're just waiting to see what kind of lie they'll land on. When she finally responded, she didn't even bother to deny it. "Oh my God, are you really calling me about that? Aaron, it's not a big deal. It's just paperwork." Just paperwork. That phrase hit me like a punch to the chest. Not even a good lie. No attempt at pretending she didn't know what I was talking about. Just flat out minimizing it. Like it was a clerical error at the DMV. "You used my social," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Technically, it was to help you," she said, suddenly switching to her favorite tone, self-righteous. "You needed credit history. You don't even use credit. It's been helping your score, by the way. You've been missing payments." Well, yeah, it was during that firm restructuring situation. I had a lot going on. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She spoke like it was some small inconvenience, like I was calling to complain about her borrowing a sweater and not returning it. "You committed identity fraud," I said, calm but direct. There was a pause. Then the fake laugh she always used when she was cornered. "Aaron, please. Don't be dramatic. It's not like I bought a car or emptied your bank account. It's a loan. People do this for family all the time." End quote. Not my family, I wanted to say, but clearly, I was wrong. "What did Mom and Dad say when you told them?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "They understood. They trust me to take care of things." Right. Of course they did. That phone call ended with me hanging up mid-sentence. She was still talking, still trying to explain how it wasn't a big deal, and I couldn't take one more word of it. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just ended the call. Then, I sat there for a long time. Not crying, not angry, just cold. That kind of cold, where your body knows it's been pushed too far and hasn't decided yet what to do about it. I pulled out an old binder from my closet, the one I used to keep training records and service awards. I hadn't touched it in years. Tucked in the back was my original enlistment paperwork. The Social Security number section was circled in red. I stared at it for a long time, reminding myself it was mine, not Lauren's, not shared, not borrowed. I printed copies of every financial record I had access to. Bank statements, credit reports, debt summaries, all of it. I compared the loan paperwork to my own signature. Not even close. It wasn't just forged, it was sloppy. Like she thought I'd never see it. I checked the originating address again. It led to a condo building near downtown Chicago. I knew it well. Lauren had lived there for 3 years. The lender had scanned copies of supporting documents, including a fake pay stub. I almost admired the detail until I realized the routing number belonged to one of my old military accounts. She hadn't just lied. She'd done her homework. I tried calling my parents next. My mom answered on the third ring, voice all cheerful like she was baking something and humming in the kitchen. I didn't waste time. "Mom, did you know Lauren took out a loan in my name?" A full beat of silence. Then, "Oh, honey, Lauren told us about that already. She said it was something to help you build credit. Mom, she forged my name. She used my social. She committed fraud. Well, it wasn't like that. She said you two had discussed it. No, we didn't. Another pause. Then, as if reading from a script, she said, "She's your sister, Aaron. She wouldn't do anything to hurt you." That's when I knew. They'd known. Maybe not every detail, but enough. Enough to make it clear that if this were a courtroom, I'd be walking in alone. I didn't hang up this time. I let her keep talking, all while my eyes landed back on that reunion invitation, still stuck to the fridge. I didn't care about the dinner or the drinks or the slideshow of old high school photos, but now I knew Lauren would be there. Not just attending headlining. She was going to walk on stage in a fancy dress, talk about family values and integrity, and soak up every second of applause. And I had 42,000 reasons not to let that happen. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there staring at the ceiling, replaying the way she said, "It's just paperwork," like she hadn't derailed my financial life with a few keystrokes. The way my mother defended her without a second of hesitation didn't surprise me, but it still hit hard. Like they'd all quietly voted me out of the family years ago, and I'd missed the memo. By morning, I had a folder open on my laptop titled, "Evidence, Lauren." I wasn't sure what I was building yet. Not a lawsuit, not exactly. But I knew I needed to get everything organized. Facts first. Emotions later. I started searching public records, bar association complaints, ethics inquiries, anything tied to her law license. She had a squeaky clean record, of course. The kind of spotless profile someone only has when they're either perfect or protected. I wasn't betting on perfect. Scrolling through her firm's website felt like being slapped with a wet resume. Her photo was right there on the homepage. Lauren Whitaker, partner. Beneath it, specializing in financial litigation and white-collar defense. Oh, the irony. I clicked on her bio. It listed all the usual credentials: top 10% of her class, published in some law review, frequent speaker at continuing legal education conferences. She even chaired a committee on ethical compliance in legal practice. That one made me laugh out loud. I followed a trail from there, diving into client reviews, case histories, and local articles. Most were glowing, but one blog post caught my eye, a short piece from a niche financial newsletter in 2020. It mentioned a brief investigation into a conflict of interest involving Lauren's firm and a struggling investment group. The firm denied wrongdoing, no charges filed, and the whole thing disappeared. Still, it was the exact year she'd used my name. I copied the article into the folder. Then I opened our last group family photo. Thanksgiving, maybe 6 years ago. We were at her apartment. Lauren was standing front and center in a cashmere sweater dress, wine glass in hand, perfect teeth in a perfect smile. I was barely visible in the back, holding a plate and trying not to look like the help. That image had always annoyed me. Now it pissed me off. I opened my email and started writing. Not to her yet, but to someone who'd actually know what to do. An old contact from JAG Corps, Commander Ellis. We'd worked together on a few cases involving service members dealing with fraud and identity theft. He wasn't flashy, but he was thorough. Subject line: requesting guidance on potential identity fraud civilian family member. I attached everything. I had screenshots, dates, call logs, fake documents. I didn't dress it up, just facts. I hit send and leaned back in my chair. Not even 20 minutes later, he responded. "Call me. This is bigger than identity fraud." When I did, he was already pacing through it, like he'd seen this movie before. He told me I needed to document everything, every single piece. He also said if she used your name for financial gain and crossed state lines to do it, that wasn't just unethical, it could be federal. That part hadn't occurred to me yet. "You said she's a lawyer?" he asked. "A big one. She gives speeches on ethics. Then she knows what she did. And she's counting on you not doing anything about it." He was right. That's exactly what she was counting on. After I hung up, I sat in silence. Not scared, focused. That kind of calm clarity that kicks in during emergencies. The kind you don't feel until you've accepted that you're not waiting around anymore. I wasn't going to scream about it. I wasn't going to post on Facebook or call the news. I was going to build a case so clean, so airtight, that when I dropped it, she wouldn't be able to squirm out from under it with charm or credentials. I pulled out the invitation from the fridge. The high school reunion was in 4 days. A formal dinner, keynote speeches, cocktail hour. It was all very polished, very network, with people you haven't thought about in 10 years and pretend you're crushing life. The email said Lauren was the featured speaker, delivering a talk called Success, Sacrifice, and Resilience, My Journey in Law. I almost gagged. I didn't RSVP. I didn't need to. Because I wasn't going to that reunion as someone's little sister. I wasn't going to sit in the back of the room while she used words like honor and service without a shred of irony. I wasn't even going to sit. I was going to stand. In uniform, with every single document she'd ever hoped I'd never find. The morning after I talked to Commander Ellis, I drove out to my parents' house. Not to argue, not to prove anything. I just wanted to see if maybe, just maybe, they had some sliver of doubt left. Some trace of fairness. They still lived in the same suburban neighborhood they'd moved to when Lauren got her first job out of law school. I parked in the driveway and stared at the same front door I used to get grounded behind for disrespecting my sister. The house looked exactly the same, except older. Like everything inside it had stopped aging the day I left. My dad opened the door. He looked surprised, but not happy, just confused, like someone had dropped off a package he forgot he ordered. "Hey kid," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "Didn't expect you." "Yeah," I figured. He stepped aside and let me in. The smell hit instantly. Cinnamon and lemon, my mom's signature scent, pumped through candles like the place was staging for a real estate open house. Mom came out from the kitchen holding a dish towel, like some kind of sitcom character mid-episode. "Well, this is a surprise," she said. Her tone wasn't warm, just cautious. I got straight to it. "I talked to Lauren," I said, "about the loan." Their faces didn't change. She used my name. My social. She opened a $42,000 loan in my name and has been missing payments for years. Nothing, not even a gasp. She admitted it, I added. On the phone. She didn't even deny it. My dad shifted uncomfortably. My mom blinked once, then started folding the towel in her hands like it was a bomb she needed to disarm. "Aaron," she said carefully. "I think there's some misunderstanding." Lauren said. "Of course she said something." I cut in. "She always does. And you always believe her. That's the dynamic, right? She talks. You agree. I get written off." My dad finally spoke. "That's not fair." "What part of it isn't fair?" I snapped. "The part where she used my identity to clean up her mess? Or the part where you let her?" "She told us you agreed," he said. "She said you'd talked about it. That she was helping you build credit." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. They actually bought that? "I serve in the U.S. Navy," I said. "I have government-issued financial counseling. I have a spotless service record. I've had no late payments, no debt, no missed obligations. But sure, I'd totally hand my identity to my sister, the one who treats me like a backup character in her life story." Mom's jaw tightened. She was in a difficult place. You don't understand the pressure she's under at that firm. There it was. The classic justification. Lauren's bad behavior was never really bad, it was just misunderstood. Circumstantial. Product of her environment. "She's an attorney," I said. "She knows the law. And she broke it. She didn't just borrow my name, she committed fraud. She forged my signature. She submitted fake documents with my military routing number. And it was Mal." My dad looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. Mom, on the other hand, was already switching into defense mode. "So what now? Are you going to go public? Drag the family name through the mud? Just for what, revenge?" I stared at her for a long second. "No," I said. "For justice." I turned to leave, but she stopped me with one last hit. "Your sister's worked hard for everything she has. Don't ruin her over something that could have been handled privately." I paused at the door. "She ruined herself. I'm just making sure it's on record. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't need to." The silence behind me said enough. Back in the car, I sat for a moment gripping the steering wheel. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done being angry. This wasn't rage, it was something colder, sharper, more focused. The kind of clarity that doesn't wear off. I texted Commander Ellis 2 words. "I'm ready." And I was. I sat down that night, and spread everything across my kitchen table: paperwork, digital printouts, timelines, transcripts. My military life had taught me how to handle chaos. Everything in the Navy runs on systems, checks, documentation. Lauren may have been the lawyer, but I knew how to build a case that could survive a hurricane. I started by organizing the loan documents, every payment history, every delinquency notice, every forged signature. I flagged everything with highlighters: green for factual, yellow for questionable, red for flat-out lies. It felt less like prep work and more like prepping for battle. The next morning, I drove to the base legal office and scheduled a consultation with a JAG officer. I didn't want special favors. I just wanted clarity. Lieutenant Jacobs, a sharp young officer with the kind of energy you only have before 2 deployments, took one look at the documentation and asked, "She used your military bank routing number?" I nodded. "That's not just identity theft," he said. "That's potentially Title 18 wire fraud, false statements, maybe even misuse of military benefits. And depending on the lender's jurisdiction, we could be talking about federal offenses across state lines." I wasn't out for blood. I wasn't trying to get her arrested. I just wanted her stopped, exposed. For once in her life, I wanted Lauren to answer to rules she didn't write. Lieutenant Jacobs gave me the name of a civilian attorney in Virginia who specialized in financial abuse within families. I called that afternoon, booked an appointment, and emailed the folder titled Evidence, Lauren. That night, I filed a complaint with the Illinois State Bar. It took me 3 hours to write it, mostly because I had to keep deleting sentences that started with, "She always," or, "My parents never." This wasn't therapy, it was procedure. I stuck to the facts. Chronological, emotionless, precise. The online form asked, "What outcome are you seeking?" I typed, "Professional accountability, full investigation. No rage, no threats, just truth." Then I submitted the complaint and shut my laptop without flinching. Over the next few days, I collected more emails from years ago where she'd offered to help manage my credit. Screenshots of messages she sent me after the loan went through, phrased like casual check-ins but littered with financial language I'd never used. I remembered one text from 2020, where she wrote, "You'll thank me when your credit score hits 800. At the time, I thought she was joking. Now, it looked like a warning. My civilian attorney called after reviewing everything. Her tone was calm but firm. "I've seen cases like this before," she said. "Not many. Because most people never speak up when it's family. But your documentation is solid, your case is real." We talked options: civil lawsuit, restitution demand, even criminal referral if the state picked it up. But what stood out most was what she said near the end. "Whatever you decide, make sure you're doing it on your terms. Not for revenge, not to make her feel what you felt, but because the truth deserves daylight." That hit. Because deep down, I knew I wasn't trying to destroy Lauren. I was trying to reclaim the version of me that never got a voice, the me that didn't get interrupted at dinner, or spoken over in conversations, or used as a prop in her stories. And I'd finally found my voice in the form of a 15-page packet of evidence, labeled and numbered, sitting in a binder on my table. 3 days before the reunion, I got an envelope in the mail from the credit union. Inside were copies of the loan documents with the original application signature. I held it up next to my Navy onboarding form. Different slant, different loop on the E, different everything. I didn't need a handwriting expert. I had eyes. There was no more doubt. No more hoping I was wrong. No more giving her the benefit of any doubt she'd never earned. I pulled out my uniform from the closet, pressed it, inspected the ribbons, cleaned my boots until they reflected the light. I wasn't going to that reunion to make a scene. I wasn't walking in to throw drinks or scream across a ballroom. That wasn't my style. I was walking in as a Navy officer with the truth in one hand and her signature in the other. The reunion was set for Saturday night at a hotel conference center in Evanston. I flew into Chicago Friday morning on military leave. Just a 3-day window. I wasn't planning on staying long, just long enough. My hotel room was modest, neat. I set my uniform out immediately. Navy service dress blues. Every medal and ribbon in the right place. Collar sharp, shoes buffed, nothing flashy, just correct. just undeniable. I checked the schedule one more time. Dinner at 6, speech at 7, cocktail hour after. Lauren was slotted to speak for 25 minutes on overcoming adversity through integrity in the legal field. Of course she was. I walked to a nearby diner that afternoon, trying to settle my nerves. I wasn't scared. I'd been on ships in the middle of the Pacific during typhoons. I'd led inspections under pressure that made grown men cry. This wasn't fear. It was readiness. My whole body was in mission mode: observe, plan, execute. Back at the hotel, I got dressed slowly. The way you do when you know everything matters. Every crease, every thread, every piece of metal. The mirror didn't show a woman with something to prove. It showed a professional. A commander. And finally, it showed someone who didn't flinch at her own reflection. I arrived 10 minutes before the doors opened. The room was already buzzing: high tables, string lights, overly ambitious hors d'oeuvres. People were hugging, laughing too loud, pretending not to look older. I didn't hide. I didn't sneak in through the side. I walked straight through the main doors, in full uniform, head high. The moment I stepped into the room, conversations started trailing off mid-sentence. Not dramatically, just subtly, like someone had changed the music without warning. A few old classmates recognized me. I saw the double takes, the slow recognition. One woman mouthed, "Oh my God, is that Aaron?" I nodded once and kept walking. No one approached me at first. I wasn't part of the usual circle. I was the girl who'd gone military while everyone else went corporate. I wasn't on LinkedIn with them. I didn't brunch in River North. I'd vanished, and now I was back, looking like I'd been promoted in silence. At 6:50, an organizer tapped the mic and asked everyone to find their seats. I took one near the middle, not too close to the stage, not hiding in the back. The MC welcomed everyone, cracked a few inside jokes about teachers and cafeteria pizza, then introduced the keynote speaker, Lauren Whitaker, partner at Franklin and Brandt LLP, and someone who's been a role model to many of us since graduation. Applause. Predictable, polished, practiced. Lauren took the stage in a fitted navy suit, funny, considering my uniform had real brass on it. She smiled like she'd been born under stage lights. Confident, commanding, fake. She launched into a story about her early days in law school. Something about resilience, pressure, tough decisions. She weaved in little self-deprecating jokes, humble enough to be relatable, proud enough to remind everyone she was successful. The room soaked it up. Then she said something that made me lean forward. "You know, I had a sister once who dreamed of going to law school. She tried, kind of. Took the LSAT. Didn't quite get there, but she joined the Navy. So, that's something." There it was. A joke, slipped in with a smile. Not mean, exactly. Just dismissive enough to remind everyone who the real star was. That's when I stood up. Not loudly, not with a dramatic flourish. Just stood, eyes turned. A few heads whipped. I walked calmly up the aisle, a manila envelope in one hand. I didn't need a mic. My voice was clear. "Commander Aaron Whitaker," I said, addressing no one and everyone. Lauren froze. Her mouth stayed open mid-word. "I believe this belongs to you." I handed her the envelope. "Consider yourself served." She blinked. For the first time all night, she looked unsure. Not angry, not defensive, just caught. Then, in the most calculated voice she could manage, she said, "Aaron, can we talk about this privately?" "We could've," I said. 2 years ago. I turned and walked back down the aisle. No yelling, no scenes. Just boots on carpet and a trail of people who suddenly had no idea what to say. I didn't sit back down. I walked out the same way I came in, through the front, in uniform, under lights, not meant for me but finding me anyway. I didn't go back to my hotel right away. I walked 3 blocks, turned a corner, and sat on a bench outside a closed bookstore. Cool air, quiet street, just the hum of cars in the distance. My hands were still steady. My head, still clear. I wasn't riding adrenaline. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't smiling either. This wasn't victory. It was closure in motion. My phone buzzed. 2 missed calls from an unknown Chicago number. Then a text. "Lauren, we need to talk. I can fix this." Of course she could. She always thought she could talk her way through anything. That's how she got through undergrad, law school, and 3 bar complaints, none of which stuck. She had a gift for turning every fire into a misunderstanding. But this time, she'd underestimated me. By the time I got back to my room, emails were already coming in. One from the event organizer: "We didn't know there was a legal matter involved. We're sorry for any discomfort caused." Another from an old classmate: "That was the most honest thing I've seen at one of these things, ever." The rest were silence. People weren't sure what to say. That was fine. The envelope I handed Lauren wasn't just a formality. It included a copy of the bar complaint, a pending civil suit, and supporting documentation, neatly bound. Not to humiliate her in public, but because if I sent it by mail, she'd claim she never received it. That's the kind of game she played. I left a signed affidavit in her firm's legal inbox earlier that day, just to be thorough. The next morning, I got a call from my attorney. "She's already contacted our office," she said, "tried to offer a settlement." I raised an eyebrow. "She's claiming it was all a miscommunication," the attorney continued. "She says you verbally gave her permission years ago, and that you misunderstood the nature of the transaction." "Right. Because I gave permission to destroy my credit, skip payments, and fake a signature across federal lines. Must have slipped my mind." I told my attorney to proceed. Within 48 hours, Lauren's firm issued a statement announcing she was taking a temporary leave for personal reasons, which was code for, "Please get off the front page." My dad called that night. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that started with, "Listen, I don't know what you're trying to prove," and ended with, "Family doesn't do this to each other." I deleted it halfway through. Funny how the people who never protected you suddenly become moral experts once you protect yourself. I didn't call him back. I didn't call my mom either. I knew where they stood. They'd made that clear when they decided pretending nothing happened was easier than admitting Lauren might not be perfect. What they didn't know was how much I had. I wasn't bluffing. I had documents from the lender showing mismatched signatures. I had screenshots of internal firm emails, Lauren forwarding personal loan notices to her work address. I even had an old voice memo from a casual conversation where she joked about fixing numbers for a family member once. At the time, I thought it was about someone else. Turns out, I was the punchline. None of this made me feel better, but it made me sure. The worst part of being betrayed by family isn't the act itself, it's the gaslighting after. The way they make you question whether your reaction is worse than the crime. The way they make you feel disloyal for wanting the truth to matter. I wasn't looking for revenge. I didn't want her bankrupt, disbarred, or ruined. I wanted a record, a mark, something that said, "You don't get to do this quietly and walk away clean." People like Lauren depend on silence. They count on shame, on the idea that no one will speak up because the cost is too high or the bond too sacred. But I'd learned something different in the Navy. Silence isn't loyalty, it's permission. And I wasn't giving it anymore. 2 weeks after the reunion, Lauren's name quietly vanished from her firm's website. No press release, no farewell post, just gone, like she never existed there. That's how law firms handle embarrassment. They don't address it, they delete it. But I didn't delete anything. The Illinois State Bar confirmed they were moving forward with a preliminary review. That meant an ethics panel would look at the evidence and decide whether to escalate to formal charges. It wasn't a trial, but it was enough to put her license on the table. That's what mattered. I forwarded them everything they asked for: sworn statements, document scans, call logs, timestamps, metadata. They didn't need the drama. They needed receipts. I had plenty. Meanwhile, Lauren finally called me. Blocked number. She didn't start with hello. She went straight into it. "You blindsided me." I didn't respond. "I could lose everything," she said. Her voice had that edge to it, part panic, part entitlement. "You took everything," I said calmly. "Credit, trust, dignity. I'm just returning the favor legally. You're my sister. You're a lawyer." She went quiet for a moment, probably debating which persona to try next. The victim? The peacemaker? The martyr? She picked the first one. I was drowning. You don't know what it was like trying to stay afloat, with my name on the line. I was holding everything together, so you dragged me down with you. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't think you'd get caught. Another pause. Then, more softly. Mom and Dad are devastated. Yeah, must be hard for them, having 2 daughters now. Click. No yelling, no threats, no begging, just the sound of a door she thought she could keep locked, finally swinging off its hinges. A few days later, a former paralegal from Lauren's office messaged me on LinkedIn. She kept it short. I always had a feeling about her. Good for you. I didn't reply. I didn't need allies. I wasn't building a fan club. I wasn't interested in vindication by gossip. I was waiting on facts. By the end of the month, the bar had escalated the complaint to a formal ethics hearing. That wasn't common. It meant they saw enough red flags to bring it before a disciplinary board. Lauren would be expected to respond under oath, not in a courtroom, but close. She tried to delay the process. Claimed mental health strain, claimed family stress, claimed procedural concerns. None of it stuck. You can buy time, but you can't undo a paper trail. Word started to get out, quietly at first. A partner from her firm resigned. One of her biggest clients pulled their account. I didn't celebrate it, but I didn't lose sleep either. That's when my mom finally showed up. Unannounced. On base. She waited outside the gate in a rental car for over an hour. I came out in uniform. She waved like she was showing up for lunch, not damage control. I just want to talk, she said. I folded my arms. About what? About forgiveness. About your sister. About what you're doing to this family. That wording stuck what I was doing. I'm not the one who stole anything, I said. She's your sister, she repeated. Like that phrase alone fixed everything. I'm also a service member. I've taken an oath. I live by rules. She doesn't get to be the exception just because you like how she looks in family photos. Mom's eyes welled up. Whether from guilt or frustration, I couldn't tell. But for once, she didn't say anything back, just stood there, holding her purse like it was a shield. I stepped back. This is the part where you say you raised us better, I said. But you didn't raise us the same. Then I turned around and walked away. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady, like someone who knew exactly where she was going and didn't need permission to get there. The hearing was held in a quiet room on the 12th floor of a downtown office building. Nothing dramatic, no jury box, no gavel, no courtroom cameras. Just a long table, 3 panelists, 2 attorneys, and a pile of paper thick enough to sink a canoe. I wasn't there to gloat. I wasn't even required to be there. But I showed up anyway, in uniform. Not to make a statement, just to exist. To be visible. Because when someone's spent years trying to erase you, just showing up in one piece is power. Lauren looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. No tailored blazer, no stage-ready confidence. Just a woman with dry lips, too much concealer, and hands that couldn't stay still. Her lawyer did most of the talking, of course. That's what you pay them for. Deny intent, dispute responsibility, redirect blame. But the documents didn't lie. The forged signature, the duplicate routing numbers, the identical timestamp used for 2 separate logins, one from my old address, one from her firm's server. The paper trail wasn't just strong, it was surgical. They brought up her version of events, that I had verbally authorized the loan to help build credit. They asked if there was any written proof of that. There wasn't, because it never happened. They asked why her payments had been late if she was helping me. She said things had been stressful. They asked why the email associated with the loan was hers, not mine. She said it was an oversight. They asked why she didn't correct the lender's records when I began missing payments. She had no answer. After 2 hours, it was my turn to speak. I didn't give a speech. I read a prepared statement. Clean, professional, no insults. No emotion, just facts. I did not give consent. I did not co-sign. I did not know this loan existed until I was denied a mortgage due to credit issues. Everything after that discovery has been documented. You have it in front of you. I looked directly at the panel. This isn't about money. This is about trust. She used my name, my record, my identity, something I spent a career protecting, to solve a problem she created. Then she expected silence. No one said a word for a long time after that. The panel thanked me and asked me to wait outside while they deliberated. I didn't pace. I didn't check my phone. I sat perfectly still, and watched the second hand crawl across a wall clock like it had nowhere else to be. After 25 minutes, they called us back in. They didn't disbar her, but they suspended her license for 18 months, effective immediately. She would be required to undergo professional ethics training, pay restitution, and submit to monitoring if she ever reapplied for practice. Lauren didn't say a word. She just nodded like she was agreeing to dinner plans, not watching her career hit the ground. Outside, her attorney tried to smooth it over. "It could have been worse," he offered. "You handled it with class." I wasn't looking for a compliment. I turned to Lauren. She wouldn't look at me. Not really. Her eyes darted past me like I was a ghost she didn't believe in. "You could have just told the truth," I said. "You didn't need to steal anything. You could have asked." She finally met my eyes. For the first time, she looked human, not polished, not calculated, just tired. "I didn't think you'd ever find out," she said quietly. She wasn't sorry. She was just surprised I wasn't as dumb as she hoped. I nodded once. And then I walked away. Not because I won, not because I needed a scene, but because there was nothing left to say, and nothing left of her that I didn't already understand. The first thing I did when I got back to base was shred the last of the documents, not the legal ones I'd already filed and stored those. I'm talking about the personal stuff. Old birthday cards from Lauren, a graduation photo where we're both smiling, a wrinkled post-it she once left in my dorm room that said, "Proud of you, sis." I don't know why I kept it. Guilt? Hope? Some warped sense of loyalty? Whatever the reason, I fed every piece into the shredder, slow and steady, until all that paper became dust. Cutting ties with your family isn't loud. It's not like in the movies, no yelling across a kitchen table, no slamming doors. It's just silence that you stop apologizing for. No updates, no texts on holidays. No pretending. You simply remove the seat at the table and stop trying to fill it. My credit was clean again by fall. The fraud case pushed through internal systems faster than normal. Once the lender received proof of the forged documents, the loan was discharged, my record restored. It felt strange, seeing a zero balance where chaos used to be. I moved out of my on-base apartment and into a small house near the coast. Nothing fancy, but it had clean walls, working locks, and not a single memory I didn't make myself. I didn't go back to Chicago. Didn't attend my parents' anniversary party. Didn't call when my cousin got married. Didn't reply when my mom finally sent a letter 3 months later that began with, "We all make mistakes." That line told me everything I needed to know. Still not an apology. Still trying to flatten the whole thing into something forgivable. Something small enough to sweep under the rug like it wasn't identity theft and betrayal. Just a mistake. No thanks. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't carry the heat in my chest the way I used to. I carried something different now. Clarity. A quiet kind of freedom. The knowledge that I'd never have to beg for validation again. Not from them. Not from anyone. Work got easier. I stopped over-explaining myself in meetings. I stopped bracing for invisible judgment. My uniform felt like mine again, not something I had to wear, like armor against my own family's opinions. People sometimes asked about Lauren, the ones who remembered us growing up together. I kept it short. "We don't talk." They'd nod, maybe ask if something happened, but I never went into detail. The full story didn't belong to gossip. It belonged to me. Every now and then, I'd think about that reunion moment, the way she froze on stage when I stood up in uniform. It wasn't pride I felt when I remembered it. It was something simpler. Justice. A reminder that the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be seen. She tried to get her license reinstated after her suspension, but the bar didn't move quickly. Reputations are slow to rebuild when they're not made of truth. Her old firm didn't take her back. I heard she was working contract law somewhere smaller. Fewer clients. Less pressure. Less power to hurt anyone else. Good. The last time I saw my dad was at a military ceremony where I received a commendation. He showed up unannounced, stood in the back, didn't say a word. After the event, he walked up and said, "You've done well for yourself." I nodded. He didn't mention Lauren. I didn't ask. That was 2 years ago. We haven't spoken since. I'm okay with that. My story isn't about revenge. It never was. It's about reclaiming space. about knowing your worth when no one claps for you, about holding your ground even when your own blood tells you you're overreacting. She said I was too dumb for law school. I became a Navy commander instead. Turns out, I didn't need a courtroom to deliver justice. I just needed the truth and the courage to stop letting her write my story. If you want more true stories about justice, resilience, and taking your power back, subscribe now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.